في هذا, for example. But instead, then comes for to their nur of Imam Ali. In the Islamic terminology, أهل بيت الذي كان جبرائيل ينزل إلينا ويسعد من عندنا. I am from the household to whom Jibreel used to descend, from he who would ascend. I'm saying this part to prove one point. One, we said that Imam Hassan alayhi salam is showing the fada'il and virtues of Imam Ali alayhi salam. This is the center. This is what we should always do. Even the gatherings that we should have, we should mention the fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. This is the center of guidance. 2, we're understanding that he is the son of Rasulullah. 3, we're understanding here, because many people don't know this. They think that if I ask you this question, you think the army of Imam Ali alayhi salam that was in these 3 battles, for example, in the battle of Jamal, in the battle of Siffin, in the battle of Nahrawan, do you think the army of Imam Ali alayhi salam, all of them believed in imamat? Or that many of them just believed that Imam Ali was the rightfully guided caliph and he was the most deserving to rule? Which one do you think? Maybe the majority or a large amount of people that followed Imam Ali during that time, they still didn't have that ma'rifah that brothers and sisters today you have, that Imam Ali alayhi salam is the imam that is muftaradul ta'a, that you have to obey. The imam that is mansub inda Allah, that Allah chose him. Is the imam that has ilm min inda Allah, the imam that has knowledge from Allah. These are 3 characteristics of imamah. Appointed by Allah, knowledge from God, ma'soom and infallible. But many of people followed Imam Ali, they just liked him. They thought he was the most qualified, he is the next Khalifa. What is the difference if you follow Imam Ali as just being the Khalifa, even though they did something very good, when we thank them for helping Imam Ali, for being shaheed for Imam Ali, very good. Imam Ali will help them. But what is the difference after 25 years? That people, after the first Khalifa, second Khalifa, third Khalifa, they thought he was just the 4th. He is just the next Khalifa. What is the difference from that ideology going to war and believing that Imam Ali alayhi salam is appointed by God? Whatever he says is the command of Allah. If he tells me to go into the oven, I have to go into the oven. If Imam Zaman right now tells me to go into the oven, even if I do not understand it, but I know he is the Imam of the age, I have to. But any other scholar, anyone else tells me, go to the oven, I say, no, that is haram. That is against, for example, what I understand. That is against my ilm, my knowledge. But if the imam says go, you go. Much different. So therefore, the imams, and what is very important from these majalis that we're trying to gather together from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, from Muharram Safar, is this: to produce our children, ourselves, in a way that we will completely submit to the Imam of the age. This is the purpose of these majalis. It's not only to say, oh, he is the best, there will no be tyranny anymore. No, to submit, and whatever the Imam of the age says, I will completely do. This is to be a complete soldier, 100% for him. Which there's different levels to be this maximum level. So therefore we see from this khutbah that Imam Hassan alayhi salam is now mentioning that, look, I am the Imam. Look, that they have brought the Quran has been descended from our household, from wahi and revelation. It's not as if, for example, I'm just the most knowledgeable, most qualified. وَأَنَا مِنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِ الَّذِي أَذْهَبَ اللَّهُ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ وَطَهَّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. I am of the Ahlul Beyt who has removed all, Allah has removed all impurity and purified completely. I am an Imam who is ma'soom. I am of the people of the cloak, who verse of purification proves that whoever is Ahlul Bayt, and the hadith says, these 5, that they are sinless, that Allah won't allow any rijs, any evil for them, they are sinless. Very interesting topic if you want to research later on, imamat in the Holy Quran. Allah has introduced imamat in the Quran. When you look at the story of Prophet Ibrahim, that we have placed him as an imam after the kalamat and after the test of Prophet Ibrahim. He was already a prophet, but now Allah has given him in the Quran, says, now you are an imam. Who placed him? The people as an imam, or Allah did ja'al that he is an imam? Then he asks of my progeny, and then he says, the second characteristic of imam, that your children that sin, they will not be, the dhalimeen will not have inherit imamate. Two qualities of imamate that we speak of. So I said three. Two of them that one, Allah points is in the Quran, and two, that they cannot be sin. They cannot sin in the Holy Quran. In knowledge also, you can understand in other parts, inshallah. وأنا من أهل بيت الذي افترض الله مودتهم على كل مسلم. فقال تبارك وتعالى لنبيه صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى. Then he said, the Prophet is commanded in the Quran to say, I do not seek for any reward except love of my close relatives. He's saying this is for us. Question, what was the reward of other prophets? What did they ask for? قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلَكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرٍ. This verse is maybe repeated 4 or 5 times in the Quran. All these other prophets came and says, we do not want a reward. We do not want a reward. Why? Because when a person comes to speak about deen and religion, he should not be taking people's money, taking benefit from the people, for example. You should have ikhlas, you should have sincerity. So Quran, the prophets keep saying, we don't want any money. We're not coming after your money. But there was one prophet who asked for something. And this is the verse of the Quran. I ask one thing for you because of my prophethood. I don't want money from you. But these 23 years, 13 years in Mecca, 10 years in Medina, around, I ask for you one thing, and that is love and attachment to my family. Only one prophet in the Quran asked for something, and that is Rasulullah. Because of this verse, in India, Sunnis, they do matam and azadari, they used to at least, for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They say this verse proves that I should hit and cry myself for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, because he is part of the ajr of Rasalah. Because if I want to say thank you Rasulullah, I have to love Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who is of his family. So therefore we understand that the mawadda of the Ahlul Beyt alayhi salam is the wage of Rasulullah. To be appreciative, you have to love them. To open this up a little bit, I want you to think of something. Why do you think Allah would place the reward of Rasulullah for his 23 years of zahma and 23 years of strife? Why would he place it love of Ahlul Bayt? Did you ever build something? Maybe there are people here who are building something that are contractors. Imagine building something for years, a long time. You'd spent your entire life on it. Maybe you're an artist, maybe you're a teacher, maybe whatever you did. Everyone here has a job. You work for something. Imagine 20, 30 years you did this. And then you know that after 30 years, it would be completely destroyed. Would you ever start? You say, no, it's going to be destroyed. It's useless, right? I'm going to build a building. I know 30 years, it'll be destroyed. The other religions, the prophets came and people changed their message. The Islam, the same thing was going to happen. As the Prophet mentions in tradition, you will follow the other religions, na'alan bin na'al, step by step. Just how they've changed Christianity, for example, Judaism, the message of Prophet Isa alayhi salam, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, how they had changed, for example, the message of Prophet Ismail and Hajj of Prophet Ibrahim already. They were going to do the same thing to Islam. So the only guarantee that Islam would stay is the family to have imams. That in terms of theology, they say al-illa mubqiyya. There's al-illa that is muhditha, that starts a starting cause, but that starting cause needs a continuation cause. And Ahlul Bayt are the continuation cause. Al-illa al-mubqiyya. And without that, there's no reason to have al-illa muhditha if it's going to be destroyed. So therefore, we understand it this way, that they are the ajr of Rasulullah, because Islam, all of that work, Rasulullah is saying that eventually, I will see the entire world will be guided one day. The entire world will be Muslim one day. Then this is the last thing from this khutbah, the very interesting. It says, وَمَنْ يَفْتَرِفْ وَمَنْ يَقْتَرِفْ حَسَنَةً تَزِدْ لَهُ فِيهَا حُسْنًا فَاقْتِرَافُ الْحَسَنَةِ مَوَدَّتُنَا أَهْلُ الْبَيْتِ. And whoever performs a good deed, we will increase the goodness for him. and the performance of the good deed is nothing but love for us. So therefore we see when somebody does an action, and that action is with this mawadda in love, it gets multiplied. Do you see ever the narrations, for example, in Laylatul Qadr? Laylatul Qadr, what happens? A'mal is khayrun min alf shahr, is worth more than 1,000 months. Then the tradition says, because of us, Ahlul Beyt, this is worth more. This is worth more than 1,000 months. So therefore, you see that this connection, this ittisal, this ma'rifah of the imams, this causes you to have your a'mal and action be worth much more. Some of the tradition talk about this ma'rifah in the imams as if a bee, for example, a bee that inside of it is honey. I was telling this tradition to this brother who's a revert, and while I was explaining this hadith to him, that the Imam, I believe is Imam Sa'ad, mentioned that our wilayat is like that honey inside a bee. And if the enemies knew how great that is, they would destroy all the bees to get that honey. If they knew, there's a tradition. Right when I said this to him, a bee stung him. Is that one of the masjids right here? Right when I said this tradition, the bee stung. Inshallah, nobody will be stung tonight by these bees, inshallah. But imagine this honey that people don't know, the worth that you have. This wilayat is like a sweet honey. This wilayat causes your a'mal and actions to reach and to have, actual potential and to be multiplied. But those who do not have it, those who have hatred of Ahlul Bayt, even when they recite Quran, that's khasara for them. That is khusran for them, that it will bring them down. Therefore, we understand that this is one of the important parts of Imam Hassan alayhi salam's speech. To give a little part of the life of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, we understand his life in this way. We can divide it, that he was born in the 3rd of Hijrah, around 3rd of Hijrah. He was martyred in the year 50, so around 47 years of age. 10 years of imamat from the year of 40 after Hijrah until 50. Those first few years, from 3rd until he's about 7, 8 years old when Rasulullah passes away, were the sweet times of Ahlul Bayt. Or Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, the family was respected. When Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, when she would enter, Rasulullah would stand up for her. Rasulullah would kiss her hand. Look at the manabi and the sources of Ahlul Sunnah. And when Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam would enter the masjid with Rasulullah, they were at a young age, under 7, we said, 7, 6. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would perform the salat, and we have the tradition. He came and entered with them, and he was وَهُوَ حَامِلْ أَحَدَ إِبْنَيْهِ Al-Hasan or Al-Hussein. He was taking Imam Hassan or Imam Hussein alayhi salam. فَتَقَدَّمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ فَوَضَعَهُ عِنْدَ قَدَمِي الْيُمْنَى, and he placed them near his right foot. Very child, it's a very young age, as a tifl possibly. فَسَجَدَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ سَجْدَةً أَطَالَهَا. Rasulullah prayed in such a way in narrations that this baby or this child was sitting on him. He was doing sujood for a long time. And then فَرَفَعْتُ رَأْسِي مِنْ بَيْنِ النَّاسِ. The narrator says, I brought my head in front amongst the people, and I saw that the Prophet was still doing prostration. And why? Because إِذَا الْغُلَامُ رَاكِبٌ عَلَى ظَهْرِهِ, because this child was on the back of Rasulullah. Was on the back of Rasulullah. So I returned to prostration. When the Messenger of Allah finished the prayer, the people said, Ya Rasulullah, لَقَدْ سَجَدْتَ فِي صَلَاتِكَ هَذِهِ السَّجْدَةِ. You made a prostration in your prayer today. مَا كُنْتَ تَسْجَدُهَا. You have done no other. What has happened here? أَوْ كَانَ يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ. Has something been commanded to you? أُمِرْتَ بِهِ. Or يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ. Has something إِلَيْكَ. Or has there been for you a new revelation, a new verse of Quran? What happened that your sujood was lasting so long? This is Rasulullah, the seal of the prophets. This is the seal of the prophets. And you see that he says then, وَلَكِنْ إِبْنِي إِرْتَحَلْنِي or irtahalani fakarihtu an u'ajjalahu. I did not like to disturb him hatta yaqdiya hajata, until he had fulfilled his need. A child, Rasulullah. Imagine us, for example, a scholar you bring, sometimes children are bring, you talk too much, for example, the children, or you make too much noise, for example, the children. There you see Rasulullah is doing the sujood, and he is prolonging it for Imam Hassan or Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Again, this was the time of izzah. This was the time of izzah. Therefore you see that this is the part of the life of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. That was a time that Rasulullah honored him. Then later on he sees, the martyrdom of his mother, Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. And sometimes he came to the likes of Mughira, and very harshly, and comes to him later on and tells him, to Mughira, that you were the one that hid my mother Fatima Zahra. He comes and confronts him later on, though he was a child. Then you see later on that Imam Ali alayhi salam was the Imam for 25 years, and he becomes, during the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam, one of the great commanders of the armies of Imam Ali alayhi salam. You see in the Battle of Jamal, for example, that at that time Muhammad Hanafiya was one of the greats, and they would say nobody as great as the son of Imam Ali, Muhammad Hanafiya. He goes forward in the Battle of Jamal, but he isn't successful. Then he gives raya and he gives the command to Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam. Imam Hassan alayhi salam is victorious. Then they ask, Imam Ali alayhi salam explains that Muhammad Hanafiya is my son. Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam is Rasulullah's son. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this is the time of the bravery of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. This is the time that you see. And now I want you to continue this. With all the fada'il that we have of Imam Hassan, I'm not going to. You can go through the Quran Mubahila about Imam Hassan. Verse of Ulul Amr Minkum, Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Verse of Tathir about Imam Hassan. Verse of It'am, Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And other verses in the Quran. The verse of Mawadda and love, Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Now you see, it is his time as the Khalifa. And people question about this time, and this is the time that we see that Imam Hassan alayhi salam is very madloom and alone. Even though we say that it is not the fault of Imam Hassan to say, God forbid, that he is weak or something like that. This was the army of Imam Ali alayhi salam that was deceived. Some of them were deceived. And that if Imam Ali alayhi salam remained alive, the same thing would have happened to Imam Ali alayhi salam. Same thing. That he would have to have, they say sulh, or they say peace, or maybe you can say ceasefire with Muawiyah. Why? Because what would have happened if Imam Hassan didn't have this ceasefire? It is the first day, for example, of his Khilafat. They're doing allegiance. 40,000 people are doing allegiance to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, but that's not many. If you look at the Battle of Siffin, how many, maybe 100,000, for example, armies like that size. If you look how many people were killed in Siffin, for example, 45,000 in the army of Sham, 25,000 from the army of Imam Ali. So 40,000 isn't much. He sends Ubaidullah ibn Abbas, his own cousin of his father, one who Muawiyah had killed, his own sons. He sends him with 12,000 people. Even the Khawarij, they do bay'at to Imam Hassan alayhi salam. They're wondering, will you continue your war against Muawiyah? We will, do allegiance. He mentions to them, I will not accept your allegiance with a condition. But he sees they're preparing the army to fight Muawiyah. At that time, you see that Muawiyah, for 500,000 or 1 million dirhams, purchases Ubaidullah ibn Abbas as general. One that nobody thought he would sell. He's from the already family. He already lost 2 sons, and he leaves with 12,000 soldiers. So Allah wanted Imam Ali alayhi salam to not have this musibat, because he had so many musibats. So that Allah took him earlier possibly, and then Imam Hassan alayhi salam has to have this peace treaty in a way, or sold. Few conditions existed, but still it was very beneficial. Even though Muawiyah, many of them he broke. A few of them were this. One was that the close companions of Imam Hassan alayhi salam were not going to be persecuted. All those generals, all those fighters that Imam Ali alayhi salam had, they were not allowed to be, for example, executed and killed. Two, you see that cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib was not going to be allowed. And generally, to some extent, because of the power of Imam Hassan and what he had, Muawiyah was forced to some extent stop, even though personally they did. They cursed Imam alayhi salam, for many years they cursed our Imam. But during this 10 years, they say that, publicly, at least, it was limited because of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And many times, when the likes of Amr ibn As and others who would curse Ali ibn Abi Talib, Imam Hassan would wait for them to come to Hijaz. Would wait for to come and says, I heard that you are cursing my father. Do not think that, I'm sure you've heard of stories. Sometimes people come to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he would, for example, say, where are you from? This is a house for you. You can stay here. You can have this food. One person from Sham came, and at that time, that person thought that Imam Hassan alayhi salam was the worst individual. Then later on, because of the benevolence and charity of Imam Hassan to this person who was cursing his father, later on he became of the followers of Imam Hassan. But not for those like Amr ibn As, not like the likes of Muawiyah, not like those who knew the status of Imam Hassan, Imam Ali alayhi salam. So at that time they come, and they come to Hijaz, very strongly. He comes at that time, and he addresses Amr ibn As. And he smashes him when it comes to, not with violence, but with words. And he says to Amr ibn As that your mother was well known in the time of Jahiliyyah, that nobody else had the reputation of your mother. He was completely silent at that time. He says, say this about my father, you should not even talk about deen. You shouldn't even talk in a way about even idol worshipping. Your mother was in this, with this characteristic. So therefore you see the strength of Hassan ibn Ali, and using that time period to gather more followers, to train more followers, because if they continue to be at war, who would be the ones that would be shaheed all the time? Those who believed in Imamah. Imam Hussein alayhi salam could possibly be in shaheed, for example. So with the wisdom of Hassan ibn Ali, he has a ceasefire that he uses. In this 10 years, 9 years, he is in Medina. He worships Allah. He trains, he does tafsir of the Holy Quran, and uses as a time to later on train the likes of those who later on will help Imam Hussein ibn Ali and become the shuhada of Karbala. And it's true what they say, that Imam Hassan prepared the army of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So therefore we learn from this that there are some times, brothers and sisters, that we are relatively free when it comes to propagating Islam. There are times when a person was named Ali alayhi salam, they would execute and murder him. And they would say, my name is not Ali, my name is Ulay, for example. They would change it, for example. My name is not Ali. There are times when they would somebody's name was Ali, they would kill him. There are times when you say the Fada'il of Imam Ali alayhi salam, they would cut your limbs off or take your tongue from your mouth. Do we live in such a time? That if I talk about Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan, Imam Mahdi, that right now they'll come and get me and execute me. If I name my child Ali, for example, they'll come and get him. Not right now. You agree? So why don't we take advantage of this time? That there is freedom globally to propagate for Islam and propagate for the madhab of Ahlul Beyt. There was a time when they would take our ulama, they would throw them off the boats. Look at Shahid Awwal or Shahid Thani. There were times they would take our libraries, burn them, and throw the scholars inside the libraries. How many thousands of our narrations have been lost? But brothers and sisters, we live in a time where relatively we're allowed to speak about Ahlul Bayt, which was not in our history, hasn't always been the case. My recommendation to myself, to you, to whatever you can, promote the message of Ahlul Bayt, because we were not allowed to talk before. And now that we're allowed to talk, and now there is social media, people will understand the truth. Look at the situation in Gaza. If there wasn't social media, do you think that all these youth in America, their minds would have changed? Or if it was only a world of BBC and CNN and Fox News, for example, legacy media, they would control the narrative. Therefore, we see it is a time that we have more opportunity to work for Imam Hassan. I advise you and myself to work more so they come more to the masjid. Just your presence in this masjid and majlis of Ahlul Beyt is very important, brings others. Encourage others to come. Help the board out, help the youth out with whatever activities they want to have in order to propagate the name. Remember, this is long term. I'm not expecting miracles. Inshallah it will happen. Inshallah the dhuhr will happen Friday, Saturday, for example. But this is something long term that you need to give our resources for imams. Just look right now, we can maybe dim the lights a little bit and think of the musibah of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Many of you brothers and sisters are from Iraq, right? Many of you wish you're in Iraq right now. Not only to be a za'ir, to be a khadim of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, right? How many people are coming right now to visit Imam Hussein alayhi salam? It will be the most biggest annual peaceful gathering every year of humanity. But I want to take yourselves to the shrine and the grave, not even shrine anymore, of Hassan ibn Ali, 7th of Safar. How many people are we right now? Do you think that even in front of the grave of Hassan ibn Ali, there are this many zawar for him right now, or no? Right now as we speak. How many millions of zawar does Imam Hussein have? You are from Iraq. How many millions visit Imam Qadhim alayhi salam for his shahada? I'm from Iran. How many millions visit Imam Rida alayhi salam for his martyrdom? What is happening in Medina right now? What musibat is this? That they destroyed the graves, they destroyed the shrines, the shrines. The shrines that once were destroyed that even Ahlul Sunnah built. The shrines, the last shrines we had were from the Ottomans, the Uthmanis. They built it because they had respect for Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam. They did ziyarat of Hassan ibn Ali. This is one of the signs of the Imam that tonight, I am so grateful that you came for his remembrance. May Allah reward you. That tonight is the night of the Madlum Imam, the oppressed Imam. The Imam that many times they would stick a dagger inside him. The Imam that his own soldiers, he would wear an armor in front of his own soldiers because Muawiyah would purchase them so they wouldn't assassinate him. The Imams that sometimes, I apologize to say this, they would take the rug and pull the rug under his feet. This is the life of Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam. And you see how madlum he is, how oppressed he is. That finally, that Muawiyah, he was so powerful, Hassan ibn Ali, that they have to, in a way, he cannot directly kill Hassan ibn Ali. He has to send his wife, Ja'da ibn Ash'ath, to do what Muawiyah wants. And the most madlum person is the one that is oppressed in his own house. The house that is supposed to be a place of tranquility. A house that is a house of honesty. This is the place where Imam Hassan alayhi salam was madlum. But it is the day of Karbala. We connect Imam Hassan alayhi salam to Imam Hussein. It is the day of Karbala. Imam Hassan alayhi salam sends two of his sons. Some say Qasim ibn Hassan has a letter from his father. He says to join this battle. He has Abdullah ibn al-Hassan in Karbala. But both of them, they say, are so small, so young, that armor doesn't fit them. Some of the Maghatal say they had sandals. You look at yourself, someone who's 11 years of age, 12 years of age, imagine them going just to fight against an adult. Now let alone to fight in battle with swords. How brave was Qasim? How brave was Abdullah? Brothers and sisters, there's two shaheeds in the day of Karbala that they died, they gave life, were shaheed on the chest of Imam Hussein. Which two of them were killed? One is Abdullah al-Radi or Ali Asghar, that Imam Hussein showed him in front of the people. They were afraid. Haram al-Shad, the three-headed arrow. The next is Abdullah ibn al-Hassan alayhi salam, that finally everyone is shaheed. They're attacking Imam Hussein, sword after sword, spear after spear, arrow after arrow. The Maqtal says that Hussein ibn Ali had become like a porcupine. His entire body was covered. At that time, Abdullah ibn al-Hasan, the son of Imam Hassan, he runs forward. He takes his arm. They're about to strike Imam Hussein alayhi salam with a sword. He takes his arm, the Maqtal says, and the sword comes and hits Abdullah ibn al-Hasan's arm and is just dangling by the skin. Imam Hussein alayhi salam comes and grabs his nephew. How hard is it? When it is your own son, it's very difficult. But sometimes when it's an amanat, when it is a trust, it is also difficult in a different way. He smells like Imam Hassan. He remembers Imam Hassan every time he holds it. Now he is hugging him and he's talking to him. But Abdullah ibn Hassan is just happy that he is hearing the heartbeat of his uncle Hussein. He says, it's okay. I am going to be dying. I'm going to become a shaheed. But I know that my uncle Hussein is alive. At that time, I apologize, brothers and sisters. Harmala, may Allah's curse be upon him. Again, the Maqtal says, takes a trident arrow, a three-headed arrow. I swear that Abdullah al-Radi and Abdullah ibn Qasim do not need three-headed arrows. One arrow was enough, Harmala. He takes these, and what happens when these three-headed arrows hits Abdullah al-Radi? It does, and the Maqtal says what a sword does. It does فَضَّبَحَ مِنَ الْأُذُنِ إِلَى الْأُذُنِ. It does what a sword does. And this is the martyrdom of the son of Imam Hassan, Abdullah al-Radi. Inna lillah, inna ilayhi raji'un. Ya Allah, we ask you, because of this pure blood of the shuhada of Karbala, because of the pure blood of poison Imam Hassan alayhi salam, give relief to all of the Muslimin throughout the entire world, inshaAllah. Give peace to those who are in Gaza, end this starvation. Give us the honor and love of muhabbat and connection of the Imam of the age of Ahlul Beyt. Make us of their true followers. Forgive our sins, forgive our deceased. And inshallah, cure all of those who are sick with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farajahum.